Hello, everybody. So I'm live. I'm pretty sure I've got, 11 seconds. So hello and welcome. This is my second live. I am Lilly. I'm streaming from Queensland, Australia. I am purely a true crime obsessed kangaroo from Australia. Obviously not really a kangaroo. That is down the Karen Reid rabbit hole, if you can call it that. So we're actually into our 24th day today of the Karen Reid trial. So it's very exciting. It's actually 10 p.m. here in Australia where I live, and it's quite a way away. We've got about an hour until court starts, but I just thought I would check in and say hello. If anybody is watching and is also following the Karen Reid trial, please say hello. I know that there are plenty of Aussies. I've had so many new subscribers in the last week or so that have said hi, which is really cool. I love that there are other Aussies watching with me. You know, we're kind of on the other side of the world. I feel really detached at times, almost like we're watching a movie, right? And so it's such a, for anybody that's ever followed true crime in any kind of fashion, this case is like next level. And I feel like I've said that with every single case that I've followed, but I'm like, but this one's next level. This one is next level. No, Karen Reid is next level. And I think if you're really interested in the behavioral kind or like behavioral side of it, so particularly the legalities. I'm not a lawyer. I've always wanted to be a lawyer, but I'm not a lawyer. But I really love the legalities. I love the intricacies in trials and things. And unfortunately, in Australia, we're really restricted. We can watch some legal proceedings online live, but they're not recorded. So we have to see them live and we watch them live, but we can't watch them back. We can't clip them. And if you're not there in person, it's just so different. So I really have delved into, over probably the last 5 or so years, into the law tube, if you like, but particularly, live trials and things, because I will watch a trial from beginning to end, all of the boring bits, the intricacies, the parts that a lot of people are happy to wait to see the reels, on the news that are the exciting parts. Whereas I like to see the bits in between. I like to see the banter in between counsel. I like to see the objections and what's not overruled and what's sustained and all of those sorts of things. And although it's very different, the law, again, I'm not a lawyer in Australia, but I do understand that the law is so different in America, the court of law. But it's fascinating. It's really fascinating to watch, and I love seeing the behaviour of, counsel, the judges, the witnesses, and even those in the courtroom. So ultimately, I am here at the moment. I am knee deep, elbow deep, chin deep in the Karen Reid trial. I'm obsessed. I'm not even obsessed anymore. I think I'm just so Karen Reid trial. I almost feel like, I'm not even, the kind of part of me that's obsessed with it has almost dissipated. It's more like I'm just there. So it's such a strange, it is really a strange case where I feel like so many people have felt felt like I have, and you've started watching the case, and somehow or another you found it, whether it was through one of the other law tubers, or whether it was through a news article, or whether it was through a friend that may have said, hey, have a look at this. However we've got here, for the most part, we have got here, and we're kind of all in the same boat, watching this trial unfold with all of these questions and wondering how it is actually real. I'll give you a quick, I did say this on my last live, but my last live was purely a test run. So I'm just going to give you a quick rundown on how I came across the Karen Reid case, and maybe a little bit about who I am just while we wait as well. So as I said, my name's Lily. I'm from Queensland in Australia. Queensland is, if you're not familiar, Queensland is a tropical state in Australia. It is currently just past 10 p.m. and I'm actually in sales. I've been in sales forever, my entire career virtually, but I've always wanted to study law. I've always had this pull to either study law or, and I've started here and there. I've done a few, bits and pieces here and there, but I've never done it. And maybe I should have, maybe I still could, maybe I will, I don't know. But with the YouTube world the way it is, it's like, you know what, it became a hobby. And I became, probably 5 years or so ago, I started to really get into podcasts, so true crime podcasts. And I would just spend so much of my time listening to true crime podcasts, and particularly started with Serial. I think a lot of us started with Serial back in around 16, 17. And it kind of progressed from there, from podcast to YouTube and back and forth. And I was a little bit involved with, on behind the scenes, with quite a brilliant podcaster in the States, with a really successful couple of seasons. He is and will always be my inspiration for picking up a mic, as he will say. Lil, just pick up a mic. Well, James, I have picked up a mic. And, I think it's just the right time. And I found, fast forward to basically a month ago, I found myself, I thought, why am I just constantly, feel like I've got so much to talk about. I feel like I've got conversation that I could have, and here I am. So, as I said, in Australia, we're kind of restricted into how much we can talk about court cases and things. We certainly don't have the freedom of information that most or a lot of states do in the States. And I can get my hands on court documents quicker from Massachusetts than I can from my own state. So, and not only that, I kind of think that, the higher profile true crime cases do occur outside of Australia. And that's not to say always. We have had some crazy stuff happen here. But certainly the ones that I've followed very closely have been in the States. So I'd like to, with Karen Reid, I wish I could remember. I do know that it started with Turtle Boy. I saw Turtle Boy with a megaphone on another show, and I'm not sure which show it is, so I'm not going to say, but I did watch a lot of the shows that probably represented not so much Turtle Boy, but maybe had a bit of a, what's this guy doing? And then I saw him again a few months later. So I remember the first time I saw Turtle Boy on the steps of the courthouse with a megaphone, right? And I thought he had like a Turtle Boy branded shirt on or tie and hat. And I was just like, yeah, okay, cool, whatever. But I didn't really look into it. I didn't really think about it. There was like 4 or 5 people with him. It would have been a year ago, I reckon, right? And so then I saw him kind of at the late end of last year on, it was either STS or Police Off the Cuff, because I did watch both of them. And it was with someone that I don't know if it was Wendy Murphy or Coffindeffer, someone who now, like, I laugh at all the time. Danielle LaFrance, hello. As for John's shoes, I know living up north, we always took our shoes off when entering a house. You just don't walk in a house with your shoes full of snow. Hey, Danielle, thanks so much for watching. Yeah, interesting, right? So I'll answer you. Well, I'll talk to your question. So where I live, as I said, is quite tropical. Like, I've not ever lived in a place that snows. I lived in southern Australia, Tasmania, where it snowed, but I went to visit the snow. I've never lived where it snowed, where, out the front door it snowed. So it's interesting, particularly when you look at the Nicole Albert's testimony. So Nicole Albert says that she walked in the classic front door, the main front door with the foyer, right, where she encouraged people to take their shoes off and put them back on. So take them off as you enter, put them on as you leave. So, and then yesterday we saw, during Proctor's testimony, John's legs. Now, I've seen that photo before, right? John's legs with the clothes piled on the hospital floor. But I've never really noticed the socks on his feet. And I did yesterday. I thought, I don't even know. I'm like, his socks. Okay, his socks. So, Daniel, had he have had his shoe off and been walking, the sock without the shoe would be drenched, right? Completely drenched. And his toes would be freezing immediately. I mean, I live in a tropical state, and I wear socks on my feet maybe 2 weeks every year. But if I take those socks off, my feet are freezing. So to be on the snow without one shoe, so I'm not really sure what you're saying, but I do know, as for John's shoes, I know living up north, we always took our shoes off when entering a house. You just don't walk in a house with your shoes full of snow, which makes complete sense. Oh, is this Dan, as in the guy that's been watching with me from did you say you're from Adelaide? Is it you? If it is, hello, I'm so sorry. If it is you, if not, hi, Daniel. Yeah, well, of course. So as Nicole Albert said, she would encourage people to walk through the main foyer entry of the house so that they could remove their shoes. And I'm not sure if you guys have seen the 3D depiction I did of 34 Fairview, and it was just the middle, or the ground level, so not the basement or the first level, just the ground level. Daniel has said something else. So I also noticed at the Sally Port, the tow truck driver wanted to take a photo of the back plate, and the officer diverted him to the front plate. Really? Okay. I didn't actually notice that. So when he was taking the photo, like when he slipped at the front of the car, the officer previously had diverted him to the front of the car. Is that right? Because, I mean, I will have it handy. I'm happy to have a look, actually. The Sally Port videos are super suspicious, right? They're so sus. All of them. I'm just going to say hello. Hello, Eli. Hello. Hello. Thank you for your support, Eli. I'm going to show a video, I think. So interesting, Daniel. I'm going to come back to you. So I noticed at the Sally Port, the tow truck driver wanted to take a photo of the back plate, and the officer diverted him to the front plate of the car. Mm. So, Daniel, what did you think about the fact that the entire Sally Port video was inverted, though? Because I think, and let's just give the tow truck driver some attention here. Why would the tow truck driver, in my opinion, and I did watch it quite closely, I thought the tow truck driver is just taking a photo of the registration plate, license plate, whatever you call it in America, rego plate, very Australian, to then, jot it down in his paperwork, which would make sense to me too. It's cold, it's slippery, it's annoying. I'm just going to take a photo quickly of the license plate and then jump in my truck, and then I'll fill the paperwork out later or now or when I'm in the truck. It was on purpose? Well, I can't imagine that it would not be on purpose, right? Because why was it on purpose? It was on purpose so that the jurors, like I did, like it got me. It actually got me. I thought, and I was looking at the tail light that was on our side, and I thought, yep. And I was zooming in on the tail light going, I can't make it out, but I'm not sure. But they're hovering around the other tail light, which is completely insignificant because hovering around the driver's side tail light doesn't matter to me. I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned about the passenger side tail light. So honestly, it's much more of a big deal than I think even the defense made of it. I was super mad once I had realized that it was done. I would love to sit Adam Lally down face to face and be like, what were you doing? Because you're either super freaking dumb, like you're really dumb, or you're trying to trick the jurors. And that just doesn't, it's not okay. I'm cool that he tricked me, but the fact that he tried to trick the 12 or 17 people that will be in charge of what happens with Karen Read's future, her life, whether or not she spends her life in prison, yeah, it's not cool. It's completely uncool. I've tried to, as much as Lally is, could he be any more frustrating, right? Complete douchebag. Hilarious. If this trial had anybody, hi Ellie, hi, thank you, love to you. Daniel, it did not get me. I noticed the inverted driver. Yeah. So that kind of, I think, and I was watching it on replay. I think it might have been either on the Young Jerks or I was watching it on replay anyway on one of the channels. And I was like, well, hang on, why would they climb over to get out of the driver's side? That's silly and weird. And I think I kind of was watching another channel when we all realised, I realised at the same time after the day had finished. Pebbles, hello, thanks so much for watching. Tow truck driver wouldn't be he wouldn't be taking evidence photos, Pebbles, you're right, 100%, but he would be taking photos for his own credit, I don't know what the word is. So I sold cars for 10 years and I would get cars that would come off. So they'd arrive at the dealership, both new and used. They'd arrive at the dealership and depending on who was available, you'd go and sign them off the truck. So if I'm signing off, at times $130,000 vehicles off the truck, I have to look around that vehicle because if there were any scratches or dents or marks or blemishes from the manufacturer or that had been done while towing or in transit, I had to kind of recognize that because that cost would then be pushed back to, whoever, right? So it doesn't take long. It's, 2 minutes, you look around the cars, you look down the side. Tail lights and headlights are no-brainers, particularly with brand new vehicles. Dents and scratches and things, you've got to look a little bit harder for. That's when you get the light shining off and stuff like that. But I would fill out a form and be like, no damage, or yes, I can see a small scratch or whatever on the left-hand side panel just above the wheel. It's easy, it's going to polish out. Or, if it was really bad, then I would say something to the tow truck driver. So it's just standard business practice, really. So if the tow truck driver is practicing standard business practice for his own sake, because if Karen was to come back, for example, and say, no, it wasn't like that at my dad's house, but when it got to Canton PD, it was like that, so you're responsible, Mr. Tow truck driver. If he hasn't got any paperwork or he may not have photographic evidence, but he hasn't got paperwork to back that up, to say, well, actually, I didn't note it down. I did do a 360 of the vehicle, and I had a look, and I noticed a dent here, and I noticed a scratch here, or the wheel was scratched, or the tail light was cracked, and there was a piece missing, but it certainly wasn't fully missing. This is why we do these things, right? To have those chains. And so, yeah, we haven't heard from the tow truck driver yet. And I'm pretty sure, although we heard from Barros the other day, that he said, yeah, it was cracked and there was a piece missing. But there wasn't 45 pieces missing. It wasn't completely missing. So I'm excited to see your comments here. So tow truck driver take backplate photos. Police officer or proctor diverted him naturally, since the investigators did not take photos of the rear of the car. So again, Daniel, that's right. They didn't take photos. Trooper Proctor and the other investigators took photos of everything but, right? They even got photos of John's car, of the Traverse, I think, of John's SUV that Karen ran into. But they didn't get photos of Karen's tail light until it was in the Sally port. So as far as we know, and we should think of ourselves as jurors, it went from fully in place until we saw it the next time, which was completely almost gone, which was taken in the Sally port on February 2nd. In between, there's no photos, because the ring camera from John O'Keefe's house, where Karen shows the damage to Kerry Roberts and Jen McCabe, has disappeared. Never existed. She never did that, in my opinion. And secondly, Proctor, Buchanan, any of the other detectives, Canton PD, so nobody took a photo of Karen's passenger side tail light prior to it being tampered with. And that's what happened. It was tampered with. Ali, I take that back. I think I've watched before, not sure, but think maybe it's only my second live, actually, Ali and Pebbles. So thank you so much. And haven't watched much of this trial. She may be innocent. I don't know. Heck, I haven't really been watching. So I encourage you to watch. If you have not heard, often people will say to me, where do I start with Karen Reid? And it is quite a, I would suggest watching the trial. Just jump in now. Otherwise you'll kind of, it depends how much time you've got, really. If you have heaps of time and you're happy to wait and ignore the noise around you, then I would suggest going for sure and watching back. But it's probably a bit too late. The noise is so loud. I think you should watch the trial live from here on in, and then in between you can catch up, and the best place to catch up is definitely Total Boy Live. So Karen Reid was this happened on 29th of January 2022 in Canton, Massachusetts. John O'Keefe, Officer John O'Keefe, who was Karen's boyfriend, was found by Karen Reid, Jen McCabe, and Kerry Roberts at 6:04 a.m. at 34 Fairview Road, Canton, on the lawn of Brian Albert, a fellow Boston police officer. Karen and John had been invited back to Brian Albert and Nicole Albert's house the night prior, the 28th of January. They had been at a bar called the Waterfall Bar and Grill drinking with mutual friends the night before. Karen and John drove to 34 Fairview. John was dropped off. Karen says she dropped him off at the foot of the driveway, and she waited out the front for him to text her to confirm that he was inside. She waited out the front for his text, for his confirmation. They'd had a bit of an argument on the way there. I think it's a bit of speculation as to why. She had been flirting with a federal agent that was in that friend group who was also at the bar, Brian Higgins, who was also heading back to Brian Albert's house. You won't pick it up straight away. Look, I'm going to say I honestly think, and I can only kind of see it from Karen's side, is that John was pissed. I think he was pissed. I have watched the waterfall footage multiple times, and I think he was drunk. And when Brian and Brian were ass grabbing, play fighting, whatever the hell you want to call it, they were not just doing that. They were being tough guys. They were drunk, and they were almost bullying John O'Keefe. And John O'Keefe was a good guy. He was a good guy. He was a good cop. He did good things. He wasn't corrupt. He wasn't a shit person. He was a good bloke. And the people that good blokes or good cops don't like, bad cops don't like, they don't like good cops because they're a threat. Now that goes deep and deep and deep, but it's all there if you watch. And this is where you need to go back and watch. And this is where I say, if you go back and you watch Total Boy from a year and a bit ago. And when I found this, Total Boy was actually in jail. In December, I found this case, and I didn't even know he was in jail when I found it. I just watched all of his Canton cover-up until kind of all started to come together, and I remember thinking, holy shit, is he in jail? And then joined the Facebook group or whatever, I had a look, and I'm like, oh my God. So there's so much, and if you've ever kind of wondered the connection between Total Boy or Aidan Carney, who's an award-winning journalist in Massachusetts, and his connection with Karen Reid case, this is where just Google it. tbdailynews.com is where you'll find his blog. I would just recommend, though, going on YouTube and just going to Total Boy Live and going to his Canton cover-up playlist and just going back and playing it. That's where you'll learn the most. So watch the trial now because it's here, but then in between, catch up because you'll get so much history and so much. Okay, so Pebbles, do they not have body-worn cams? No. And so I have been watching the Canton Select Board meetings, right, for the past year or so as well. And they just didn't have it in the budget. They didn't have it in the budget. So, no, they didn't back then. Proctor said they argued in the car. Did Karen tell him that? I'm not sure. Maybe. So Jennifer McCabe also testified that they, because of the directions that she had given them, she said go past Bella's house. Bella's mum was someone that John had actually dated in the past. And so John's two children that he had that you may have heard about were actually his niece and nephew, and he had adopted them. John's sister had tragically passed away a couple of years prior. I'm not actually sure when, so I'm not going to pretend I know, but I know that it was, a few years prior, and those children's father had passed away at a similar time. So ultimately, these two kids that were quite young, I believe under the age of 10 at the time, had been orphaned, and John took them on. He adopted them, his niece and nephew. And as a result of that, had taken on a spot with BPD, the Boston Police Department, that would enable him, it was more parent-friendly, which was in the, I don't know exactly what division, but it was in sex crimes or something along those lines. So it was more of a day job, I guess, rather than an unpredictable role that he may have had. Yeah. He had a beautiful home. You can have a look at the home that John lived in and that Karen and the kids lived in. But Karen was also she was super, super academic. She was a professor. She's not sitting in the courtroom with, two unbelievable, representations, legal representatives without some decent dollars behind her. So yes, a lot of people say she's lucky. I think, I don't know, maybe she's lucky. Maybe she was just smart, because I think that this could happen to anybody. And I can tell you, if this happened to me, I wouldn't be so lucky. I'd probably be sitting in jail. The fact that Karen was just Karen and was in the financial position to defend herself. Yeah, otherwise she'd be sitting in jail. And who knows as well, if she was sitting in jail, if it would have been brought to light as to what she was actually charged for. So as I said, when Turtle Boy brought this case, I think somebody said to Turtle Boy, have a look at this. He's a Massachusetts journalist and blogger. I hate calling him a blogger because I just don't like the word. He's a journalist. And so he started investigating, and he brought so much attention to this case, so much so that people, even like myself and so many others, are like, who is this weird dude with the megaphone and the turtles all over, the turtle tie, or like the green suit that's in court? Like, he looks like a knob. And then you start watching his stuff. Well, I do. And so many other people have and you're like, this guy's likable. He's funny. He's smart. He knows what he's talking about. He's got morals. Okay, cool. Let's keep going. And that was where I found myself. I was like, this guy is freaking hilarious. Like, fucking hilarious. And I was in a really actually shitty point at the time, late last year, and I found myself watching him almost like it was therapeutic. He was just such a legend, and so much of a legend that there was almost, look, I don't care what you think of me, but it's just grounded too, right? I'm going to show you a video. This gives me practice too, because if I, bugger up, then you guys will forgive me, right? But I just think he's so great. I have so much respect for him. I think he's such a legend. So, okay. Let's just go to X for a sec. All right. Trending Jen McCabe. Like, really? So, Aiden. He's got such a story. It is such a great story. I love it so much. Okay, so there's nothing new. Let me go then to. Let me go to. Okay, Turtle Boy. No. I'm not going to play that. Most of you have probably seen it, but oh my. Okay. These ones, right? So these 9 months ago. So if you're not sure, I hope you can see, if you haven't done this, Turtle Boy Live, right at Turtle Boy Live, go to his playlist, and then go Can't Cover Up. Okay. Can't Cover Up, proving Karen Reid's innocence. So view full playlist. Okay, so it streamed a year ago, and so the episodes are numbered. Right, it says 203 videos. There is so much content. Now, this is his first one, Framed for Murder. I'm not going to play it all, but this is before he even had his cool song. So anyway, there is so much content. I'm not going, as I said, I'm not going to play all of this because there's so much. Hang on, I'm going to pause it for a second, but he is hilarious. All right, so I'm just going to have a look. Daniel, do you think Proctor is part of that thick blue line gang of corrupt and tyrant coups? Yeah. I think Michael Proctor is corrupt. Don't you? 100% I think he's corrupt. I think Michael Proctor has a lot to answer for. Yeah, I'm not sure. Are you watching the trial? Because everything he says is a lie. And Alan Jackson kind of shoved that down his throat yesterday and the day before. I think it's quite fascinating. I'm quite fascinated, to be honest, more so with Brian Albert. Yeah, I think it's quite interesting that Brian Albert has this effect. But I have also been, I guess, in a position where if you're growing up in a town and it's a smaller town where people have names and people you don't F with this sort of person, or you don't mess with this sort of person, or he's this or he's that. You just don't mess with them. It's real. It happens. And I found Brian Albert super fascinating on the stand because he didn't throw out his tough guy persona. I think Brian Albert came across as very likable. I know that I would, if I met him somewhere, whether it be through work or friends or at a bar, I would like him. I'd also like Proctor. Definitely Higgins. I would like Higgins. They're likable. They're likable people. So it's quite interesting because although Chicken Palm Charlie, which is Total Boy saying, for Chris Albert, no, not not the kind of person that I would get along with quickly, right? Whereas Higgins, Proctor, Albert, like Brian Albert, kind of have a quick beer or have a even at a work function. They're just kind of sociable, interactive, engaging types of personalities. But Chris Albert is a little bit more, he's the weird dude that owns the pizza shop in town. And he's just, a weirdo. I don't know. So I found Nicole Albert quite interesting to watch, but hard to read. I think she is a very loyal human being. Unless she doesn't like you, and then she probably doesn't really give a shit. I think Julie and Chris and Colin are almost all, I don't know, they're almost like they live in their own fairy tale, like this land of nothing. I think poor Colin is, and I don't know, I'm not sure, but surely he's on the spectrum. He's got to be on the spectrum. If he hasn't been diagnosed officially as being on the spectrum, then and again, I'm not a doctor or a pediatrician, but I see him as being on the spectrum 100%. And interesting compared to what I had seen of him. Interesting. I think it's interesting too about the theory of the defense, right? So what happened then? Who killed John if it wasn't Karen? And I think I don't know. But I think Higgins has a lot to do with why Karen's sitting where she is today. I think he organised the Aruba girls. I think he told investigators and McCabe, etc., about her medical issues and Aruba, etc. He also planted the seed about how they were having issues, Karen and John, because he knew all of this. Higgins also showed up on, February 10th with a lawyer. Higgins has a lot more to answer for than, I feel like Higgins almost has more to hide But physically, in terms of a fight and who flogged the shit out of John, and it wasn't Karen's car, it was more so Colin and Brian, more so Brian Albert and or Higgins. I think if Colin was there, he might have made a song and a dance like a clown, but surely he doesn't have the physical ability to belt the shit out of a bloke like John O'Keefe. But Higgins and Albert do. Hence, kind of comes back to why cover up that Colin was there. Well, he didn't really do anything. He was just dancing around like a loser. He's a 17-year-old freaking high school kid that, was yelling out at John being a dickhead. Loser, right? So even if Colin was there and he wasn't picked up by Ali McCabe at 12:10, I think that he probably didn't have much to do with it. I think Brian Albert and Brian Higgins are the culprits here, third-party culprits. Colin Albert he's a wimp. He's a wimp. He's not going to flog the shit out of a Boston police cop, is he? No way. All right, let's have a look. Daniel, I think he is corrupt, and most cops are corrupt and tyrants. They have too much power and qualified immunity. Sure. I'm a little bit careful with saying most cops are corrupt and tyrants. I'm not anti-cops. I am anti-cops that are corrupt, though. So, yeah, I hear you. John was really single. Maybe the ladies talked about him too much and jealous husbands retaliated. 100%. I do agree with you there. Maybe one of the wives was not loyal and had an affair with John. I agree with you there too. Or perhaps wanted to have an affair with John. So I looked at John as handsome, noble, honest. Like he had his shit together. Had a nice house. He took on children because his sibling had passed away. Altered his career so that it was in line with being able to be there for his niece and nephew, and have a line of be a parenting figure without having a role in the BPD that was going to not enable him to look after them. And you know what, Daniel? Who loved him? Jen McCabe, Kerry Roberts, the wives of, and I feel bad I've forgotten their names because they aren't actually huge witnesses in the case, but the wives of the other friends that were at the waterfall, there's a blonde lady and a brunette lady, that testified, who loved, and one of them even said, what was his name? He was so gorgeous. I've actually posted something. He's a beautiful guy. His wife said, why can't you be like that with me? Talking about how John was like that with Karen. John went to the house, took his shoes off, was invited in the basement, and boom, all hell broke loose. The dog helped them. Yeah. I think so. I really think so too. I think for sure the lacerations on his right arm are from Chloe. Yeah, I agree with you. And it was so easy. I'll show you in a minute, actually. Daniel, have you seen my 3D depiction of... It was so easy for him to get into the basement without anybody noticing that was in the dining room or kitchen. Night, my darling boy. I love you so much. Have a wonderful sleep. I will talk to you in the morning. Eli, is my sound good with my new microphone? Test, 1, 2, 3. I'll try and bring up the court will start in 10 minutes, which is cool. Hi, here it is. Bye, babe. I'll see you in the morning. I'll talk to you in the morning. Love you heaps. So I did this. You reckon? Proctor already heard concerning the affair and had to protect the Alberts and Higgins. I don't know. I feel like maybe. I don't know. Anyway, here is my ground level of 34 Fairview, right? It's very basic. Literally, it's the ground level. There's no basement. There's no second, upstairs floor. This is the driveway, the letterbox, that level. This is the backyard, which just shows the pool. I've done nothing special to it. It's not fancy. It's not exciting. But it did take me like days to do, so I'm quite excited and proud of it. But anyway, this is the letterbox. Here is the road. Here is where apparently Karen Reid stopped, let John O'Keefe out. And this is of the car. And then she shuffles forward 3 times. And then Ryan Nagel comes in and parks here in front of the driveway. I don't know if you can see my cursor. And, we know the rest of the story. Now, remember, there's 2 doors, 2 front doors. It's not fully to scale. It's pretty close, but not fully. There's a couple of steps here. There's lots more bushes here. It's snowing. There's some steps here this is the main front door. So, Daniel, going back to what you said, this is the door, the foyer. It is January 29th or 28th, 29th. It's snowing. There's a blizzard coming. It's in Massachusetts. It's freezing, right? There's a blizzard coming. Nicole Albert wants most people, she's got visitors coming over, she wants people to come in to the foyer area, right? This is free. I did this, it's nothing special, which is why I bugger around with it so much. Okay, let's just do it this way. She wants people to, and she did come through the main door. In the foyer, this is the foyer area, all right? Here. Brian Albert Jr., Sarah Levinson, Juliana Nagel, they're all sitting here in the kitchen. Haha, laugh, lol, where's my brother, yada yada, looking out the front windows. Yeah. Now, this is the other door that Brian Albert thinks he went into, and he testifies that he walked through this door and Brian Higgins followed him. Everyone else, Caitlin Albert, Nicole Albert, say they went through the main door, took off their shoes in the foyer, and as they were entering, out comes Colin. I hope you can see this. Can you see it? Yeah. So it was kind of like hi bye to Colin as they were taking their shoes off. He was leaving. And then you've got, as I said, Brian Albert. I'm not exactly sure where I was sitting. I did try to place it. I'm pretty sure Brian Albert was here somewhere because he said he looked out the window. Sarah Levinson may have been here. Juliana Nagel was here because she turned out and looked out the window too. She said she went out this door, out this one, not the main one, to go and see her brother. Caitlin Albert, who said she came through this way with her mum, past Colin, took her shoes off, went straight in and said g'day to her little brother, Brian Albert Jr., the girls, ended up getting a drink. And Nicole Albert, mum, went to the kitchen. She started cleaning up because, that's what mum did. She loved cleaning up. It's not unusual. I reckon Nicole Albert got home. They'd been at the pub for a few hours. Brian Albert Jr. had some friends there. And there was they said that they got some takeaway from D&E. They probably had calzone boxes, pizza boxes, and, empty cans of alcohol and or beer on the benches and stuff. It's a mum thing, and I don't dispute that. I think that she probably did. She probably came in, she probably started cleaning up and whatever. I don't think she put her gloves and apron on and started scrubbing the floor. I think she was just kind of picking up. Caitlin Albert's kind of hanging out in between, saying g'day to everyone. Meanwhile, Colin Albert leaves. Brian Albert and Brian Higgins have decided to go in this door. We'll just go in this side because we're going to have a look at some military medals and photos. So there is definitely conflicting information here because Nicole Albert and Caitlin Albert say, yep, Dad and Brian Higgins were in this room and they were looking at some memorabilia and stuff because my older brother, my eldest son, is in the military in California, so they were doing that, which was in here, apparently. Now, according, however, to other testimony, I might be getting mixed up now, it was like 6 weeks ago and so much has happened. They went upstairs. They went through the front door and then they went upstairs, which I haven't got, but up we go, to Brian Albert, the other Albert Jr.'s, the other, Albert's son, upstairs to his room to have a look. Now, Brian Higgins says, no, I wouldn't do that. I never went upstairs at his place. But everybody says they disappeared. They disappeared for a few minutes, which happens to be at the same time that John was dropped off. So my point being, John runs up the driveway. It's snowing. It's cold. He doesn't have a jacket on. He's got this light sweater on that we've seen in court. And he runs through here because the boys go, hey, cool, come through here. In he comes. Come out the back. Now, at the back is a patio. Then they can come over here. And then they can enter through this door. Everyone's sitting over here. Come through here. John? Oh, sorry, so annoying. I'm just going to point it out, all right? Out the back door, through the other door, in and to the right. This is the basement entry here. Meanwhile, everyone's hovered around this table, wondering what Julia Nagel's doing out the front with her brother. Jen McCabe, Matt McCabe arriving. Colin's leaving. There's all this other stuff, Nicole's cleaning up. There's all this other stuff happening. It's so easy to believe that something happened and that John was able to get to the basement. Now, let's say he didn't go through this way. Let's say he went through the front door. Well, Nicole and Caitlin are already in here. Bang, boom, boom. He's in. It's not hard any which way to get to the basement. Sorry, it makes you sick sometimes, doesn't it? So yeah, front door, straight there. So there's this door opening here where everyone was sitting that they might have seen John run past, but no. Hi, Lilly. Hello. Hey. All right, I'm going to have a look now. I was just having a quick look at the 3D thing I did of 34 Fairview and why I believe that I beg your pardon, John could have easily made it to the basement without everybody else seeing, without Brian Albert Jr., without anybody else knowing except for Brian Albert and Brian Higgins. Super easy. So, all right, let's have a look. Let's see. Look at him. Isn't he gorgeous? If you are not up to speed with Karen Reid, you have to go follow. I will put his link down below, but it's Turtle Boy Live. He's unreal. All right. I like to watch Law and Crime. Let's have a look. So at lunchtime today for court, it's now 11 p.m. my time. And at lunchtime today, I am joining Dylan from over at the Alternate Corner. I'm so excited. So excited. It's my first kind of collab, and so I'm so grateful that he's having me. And he's in Wales. So Dylan over at the Alternate Corner, if you haven't been over to check him out, that's the Alternate Corner, TheAlternate Corner. He's in Wales. He's absolutely gorgeous. He's teamed up with Sean McDonough. Again, if you don't know who Sean McDonough is over at Going Through the Motions, Sean is like the case of all, I think I removed myself. I apologize. Right. But Sean has been unfortunately away this week. He's had tragic family circumstances, and I actually said, hey, Dylan, do you want me to come and join you? And he offered to have me in for lunch today or tomorrow, so which is super exciting. So that's in a bit. Now, I kind of want to be the small person here, so how do I switch? Thanks, guys. I'm really just getting used to this. Is that good? That's good because I'm little, right? I'm not in the way. Oh. No, that is not what we want. Not at all. Is that good? If you're watching and you can see, is that good in terms of watching? I know it's not started yet, but. Oh, thanks, Lilly. Cool. Where are you from? So I'd love to know where you're from. Are you Aussie? Are you American? I love having you here. It's so cool. I've wanted to do this for so long, and I'm so excited that I'm finally kind of doing it. Let me know where you're from. Oh, yes. Cool. Have you been kind of watching? Did you comment on my stream the other day or on one of my videos? There's actually like a really good amount of Aussies that have, I've noticed in the groups on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook very much. There's a lot of notifications over there. But Lilly, was it you that mentioned CQ or Central Queensland the other day on a comment on one of my videos? Thank you so much. It's so cool. I love finding other Aussies because, as I said, like we're so restricted, right, in terms of, yay, thanks. Thanks so much for being here. So who do you usually stream with? Do you usually watch someone else's stream, or do you just watch Law and Crime, or do you watch like Turtle Boy's usually in court, or like do you usually watch Anybody? Like I usually hang in the chat. I used to hang in Melanie Little's chat during court proceedings, but then I kind of went over to Young Jerks for a bit, the Galera, and switched between. And now I kind of have been over with Dylan and Sean, although he's been away this week. I love Melanie Little. Like I love her. But she got so busy. She's so popular that I couldn't even like talk in the chat. I kind of wanted a little bit of back and forth. And and I'm a member with Melanie. I love her so much. I'm in this rabbit hole in between Karen Reid right now of the Lisk Long Island serial killer, Rex Heuermann, and she's done a heap of videos on him kind of last year that I haven't seen. I've pretty much caught up on them now. Yeah, her chat's too quick. But yeah, she's so gorgeous. I love her too. Yeah. I think so. As I said at the beginning of this video, whether or not you were on, I actually Melanie Little used to be a guest on Judy Ron and Police Off the Cuff. And Police Off the Cuff is nowhere near as big as Judy Ron, but Bill, his name is, and he's just this adorable older ex-cop in New York City who used to have Melanie Little on. And I loved when he had Melanie on over the last couple of years. And I'd be like, I love this chick. She's really cool. And, I remember Bill used to introduce her as like an ex-attorney and a mother of five and an actress. And every time she was on the show, I'd be like, oh, I love this chick. And then I noticed that she started her own channel. So, yeah, so cool. She's really cool. Have you delved into the Long Island serial killer, Rex Heuermann? It's nuts, man. It is nuts. I think court's starting. I'm kind of not excited. I'm just so bored of Lilly. I really struggle with Lilly. It's like the highlight reels are, oh, Lily, can you tell me, can you hear the call? Oh, Lilly's terrible. Yep, I went down Delphi, but you know what? I haven't actually been in. You can't hear the court? Oh, awesome. Thank you for letting me know. Okay. No, I can hear Arnie Bev talking. I'm muted, yeah, but okay, let's see now. Can you hear now? I'm so grateful I've got you here, though, to know. You're not missing anything. I can hear Lally. and you're not missing anything. Speaker. What about now? Can you hear the court? This guy looks like the dude out of Austin Powers, right? Oh, why? What am I doing? Okay, maybe. What about now? What's happening now? I guess I have no idea. Completely lost everyone. Sorry. Hang on. Tully's just crapping on. You're so kind for actually hanging around and helping me. I'm so grateful.
Kind of checked all those boxes. It was inside, it was secure, and
What about that?
it was heated. Now,
Can you see Tully? Stupid StreamYard.
over the course of your career, specifically within the homicide units of the second unit of the
You can hear the
Attorney's
court?
Office,
Yay!
approximately how many investigations have
I'm
you
so grateful
led or
for
been
you.
part of in relation to?
Thank you.
Let me first ask you this:
And
as
you
far,
can hear
as far
me.
as your unit is concerned, how is it that, from a staffing perspective, how is it that an investigation is conducted as far
Thank
as
you. Thank
certain
you so
roles,
much.
or can you speak a little bit about sort of the roles that different people within your unit play with reference to an investigation, just in general?
Sorry.
Within the unit,
Thank
we have
you,
different
Lilly.
sections. We have the homicide section, narcotic section, and special investigations. So each is kind of broken up into that. Obviously, the homicide section will undertake homicide investigations, but we work as a team. So there'll be situations where you may need an all hands on deck just to get some people out there. So the narcotics folks will help with homicide investigations and vice versa. The homicide people.
I don't know, but this guy, I wonder if how much he knows how much Bukaki and Proctor have actually completely rolled MSP in the last few days. Tully to me is like the most sketchiest mofo of them all. As far as I'm concerned, Proctor and Buchanan answer to him. And so Proctor and Bukaki, their actions are because Tully is mates with Albert. I hate this guy.
Will help with narcotics investigations when needed.
Your Honor, may I just have a moment?
Yes.
How adorable is the court reporter? I love her.
Now, specifically when it comes to a death investigation, there's someone who's assigned as what you call a case officer, is that correct?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury what the role of the case officer is and what, if any, other sort of supervision there is with reference to that case officer?
The case officer is essentially the central collection point for the investigation. So they are the person that would gather the evidence, the records, hold those records, and then somebody needs to be held accountable for a to-do list or something to do. Supervisor would go to that one person, as well as the district attorney's office would know who to contact about a certain case, and then we'll go from there. Obviously, that case officer usually is a rank of trooper, especially when talking about unattended deaths. They have a sergeant and 2 lieutenants that are supervising them in that
So funny.
realm.
It looks like, yeah.
And as far as interviews are concerned, what, if any,
She's
sort
always
of
so
policy
stressed.
is there with regard to troopers and how many would be involved in the interview, if any?
It's adorable.
We would always have 2 people present, either a trooper and a local detective, or 2 troopers.
Not going to fall down.
Just one
Like,
ask questions, one
what?
take note taking. It's just good practice.
And with respect to this investigation, the locals, as far as Canton Police Department, was not something that you utilized, correct?
Correct.
And again, I know you testified a little bit about it yesterday, but if you could just reiterate or expound upon sort of what your discussions were with the chief as far as Canton Police Department's involvement in this investigation.
What was your
going
discussion
forward,
with Chief Berkowitz?
following the early morning hours of January
Detective
29th?
Lieutenant Tully?
Our conversation circled around in the early hours about the homeowner of 34 Fairview, which was Brian Albert,
Brian Albert,
has
yeah.
a brother, Kevin Albert, who was a detective with the Canton Police Department.
His brother, yeah.
And so where we were, we had essentially zero information about the investigation. We wanted to remove any appearance of conflict by not having Kevin Albert or any of his coworkers involved in the investigation.
Was
Right.
that in the investigation in its entirety, or the interviewing process, or how was that sort of delineated, if at all?
So did you do that?
Definitely
or-
no interviews. They were not involved in any discussion. Essentially the entire investigation.
Okay.
And
Sure.
as far as the case officer is concerned, is the case officer someone who, particularly in a homicide investigation, is as far as a decision
So funny
regarding
that they've called him
charging,
a case
is that
officer,
something that a case officer would
instead of a lead
be tasked
investigator?
with?
No.
Like it's fucking preschool.
Now, turning our attention back to
And
your
why do they
testimony
look the
yesterday,
same?
there were items that you had retrieved from
It is BS. It
search
is
search on January 29th, correct?
Yes.
garbage.
And as a precursor, if I could ask you sort of, over the course of your career, specifically within the homicide unit with the district attorney's office, about how many death investigations, homicide investigations have you been involved in?
I would say in excess of 600 unattended death investigations that I personally investigated.
Oh, good.
That's not
Well, I look
counting
forward to
those
hearing
phone
his
calls that
expertise.
the calls I end up declining that I'd mentioned yesterday. In addition to that, I probably have either worked or supervised 75 homicides. And then
What about
getting back to the
NDA?
unattended deaths, I've supervised countless since I've attained the rank of trooper and lieutenant.
What
Sorry,
about
sergeant and
motor vehicle
lieutenant.
accidents? Mr.
And
Tully?
with respect to your training and with respect to your experience, how many of those investigations have involved injuries which included abrasions?
Probably 10 to 20% of them.
And if you could,
Stop
at
it.
least, from your understanding, if you could explain to the jury what your understanding of what is an abrasion.
Objection. Sustained.
Yes, thank you, Auntie Bev and David.
Um,
Unbelievable.
With regard to the items that you
How many of
covered on
unattended guests
January
have
29th,
experienced abrasion?
there was one piece of
Everyone.
clear plastic you testified yesterday had something that you termed as stippling on the outside, correct?
Yeah, I may have used the word dimples, but yeah.
Now, with respect to Mr. O'Keefe, at some point, did you have occasion to view photos of Mr. O'Keefe from the Good Samaritan Hospital?
Yes.
And with regard to the items that you recovered, what, if any, significance did you observe between those items and the injuries that you observed to Mr. O'Keefe?
The injuries to Mr. O'Keefe, I noticed the abrasions had a certain pattern on them. And I know that when a blunt force object is involved in causing an abrasion, the characteristics of the object that comes in contact with a person will often leave the characteristics
It was the
on that
Lexus
person
with-
in the form of an abrasion.
Yes.
And with respect to this specific case, as far as any items recovered on January 29th and your observations of Mr. O'Keefe, what, if anything, did you observe of any significance in relation to that?
I'd be comfortable in saying that the marks on Mr. O'Keefe are consistent with,
Objection. Sustained.
You're not a medical expert, mate. You're a cop. Stop it, Lally.
Sir, if I could turn your
Move on.
attention.
They're unreal, man.
Two other members of your units are
Unreal.
troopers by the name of Trooper Dunn and Trooper Moore, is that correct?
yes,
And on February 2nd, 2022, are you familiar with them retrieving some video in relation to this investigation?
yes,
And specifically from the town of Canton, did they retrieve video from there?
yes.
And specifically, what location did they retrieve video from?
From the Canton Public Library at 786 Washington Street.
Good.
And are you familiar with them speaking with a gentleman by the name of Mr. Jutras?
Yes,
And he's an IT person with the town of Canton.
yes.
And as far as the timestamp,
Lally
with regard
said,
to the
yeah.
video that was retrieved from the Canton Public Library, what, if any, information do you have in reference to that?
Whenever we retrieve video, we want to ensure the timestamp is accurate, because as we've learned, businesses are not always great about updating the timestamp. So that's
Oh.
always top of mind when we
They're
collect
not very
video.
good at it.
Mr. Jutras assured us that the timestamp on the video was consistent and in real time.
Wow.
Now, the following day of February 3rd, you familiar with Trooper Moore retrieving some additional surveillance video?
Yes,
And where did he retrieve that video?
from Temple Beth Abraham in Canton at 1301 Washington Street.
But where is it?
Now, as
We
far
haven't
as
seen it.
those two
We haven't seen it.
locations, as far as the Canton Public Library and the Temple Beth Abraham, are you familiar with where they are in relation to each other?
Yes,
Both located on Washington Street, is
Where,
that
if
correct?
any,
yes.
place
About
are they?
How far away from each other are
About a mile and a half.
they? Now, with reference to the Temple video,
How did it?
what, if any, information did you receive in regard to the timestamp on that video?
That was also accurate.
Now,
Was it inverted?
from each of these respective locations, what timeframes was Trooper Moore in one instance and Trooper Moore and Trooper Dunn in the other instance? What timeframes of video did they retrieve from each of those respective locations?
From 12 a.m. midnight to 1 a.m. and from 5 a.m. to 6 a.m.
And why was it that those were the timeframes, based on what you learned to that point in the investigation, why were those the timeframes that the troopers were looking?
We had reason to believe that those were the times that Miss Reed's vehicle was traveling in and around that area.
And you decided that she was the one who did it.
And
So-
I'll get to that a little bit more in a moment, but as far as reason to believe that Ms. Reed's vehicle was traveling in the area around those times, what, if any, information did you have to base that on?
We had statements and video from the Waterfall Bar and Grill, also on Washington Street, a little bit further down, and the car departing in that direction. We had Information about a car that matched her description arriving at 34 Fairview at a certain time shortly before 12:30 a.m. And so, like we always do, we do a video canvas and look for video cameras from that first known point, which would be the Waterfall Bar and Grill, to the residence 34 Fairview, and then from there, from 34 Fairview to 1 Meadows Ave, which was the home of John O'Keefe.
In reference to the morning hours between 5 and 6 a.m., the later morning hours between 5 and 6 a.m., what, if any, information did you have in relation to Ms. Reed's travel at that time?
So we had learned through interviews that she was calling people as early as 4:45 in an effort to locate Mr. O'Keefe. And a statement that she had left the house shortly after 5 a.m. We then know that she arrived at the McCabe residence on Country Lane after 5:30. So we're trying to account for the movements of the vehicle for that 30-minute block.
Now, in reference to phone calls, you've had occasion to review information related to the defendant's phone.
Yes.
You mentioned that about 4:45 in the morning, she made phone calls trying to ascertain, or allegedly trying to ascertain the whereabouts of Mr.
Yeah,
O'Keefe.
she was
Is that correct?
panicking.
Yes.
She didn't
Prior
know
to
where her
those
boyfriend was.
4:45 a.m. phone calls, were there other phone calls that the defendant placed?
She thought
Yes.
he was out
And
with
to whom
another
did she
woman.
place those calls and about what time?
Starting at 12:33 a.m. to 6:03 a.m., there were 53 phone calls from Ms. Reed to a phone number associated with John O'Keefe.
Which is interesting.
And in addition
Considering
to those phone calls, to
Murdered
Mr.
him on
O'Keefe's phone,
purpose.
what, if any, other calls did the defendant make prior to those 4:45 a.m.?
There were phone calls to her family members, to Jennifer McCabe, Kerry Roberts, Camaranos.
Everyone that Don was with.
Those are
night
the ones off the top
before.
of my head. I have the notes in front of me if I want me to refer to them.
You all right, the witness may?
Yes.
Guilty. Like, are they? This is not. It just can't be real.
Would you like me to continue,
Looks
ADA
like a
Lally?
piece of
Yes.
crap.
After
Blimey.
6:03,
They're gross.
when Mr. O'Keefe was found, there are a number of calls to members of John O'Keefe's family.
No, the phone calls to family members of her own, that the defendant's family members, those were specifically to her mother and her father, is that correct?
Yes.
And did those phone calls precede the phone calls to either Ms. McCabe or Ms. Roberts or anybody else earlier that moment?
On the call detail records, they don't appear, but I know the phone dump has other information.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Why is Lally doing
Lieutenant,
that?
turning your attention back to the videos we were speaking about, showing you a disc, just asking you if you recognize that.
I do.
And what do you recognize that to be?
It is surveillance video from Temple Beth Abraham.
Finally.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm wondering here if we'll see.
No objection.
Thank you.
I don't know.
Exhibit 570.
It's always dodgy.
572.
I've
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
no faith that it's going to be not dodgy. It's either going to be
Can you another document?
distorted or inverted or the time will be
I do.
wrong.
And
Or...
what do you recognize that?
It is a map I created with icons of the town of Canton.
And how did you create that map, sir?
In paint.
Using Google Earth as the mapping software, I placed icons on locations within the town of Canton that are relative to this investigation to provide better context
I do
and
it with
illustrate
Um,
the area that we're going to be
when
discussing.
we had little lunch
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
with, it was Mikey
There's the next exhibit.
Proctor and
No objection.
Thank you. Exhibit 573.
his mate. Oh, what was his name? Oh,
Your
I'm
Honor, may I
not
return
sure.
exhibit 573 to the witness?
Yes.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could publish that to the jury. at this
K-Dog
time.
Albert,
Yes.
maybe? It's just so stupid. It's just gets sillier and sillier. Let's have a look. Here we go. Stop it.
Lieutenant, you have the laser pointer.
I can do this.
I do.
I have done this.
So using that laser pointer, if you could direct the jury's attention to the
Stop it.
icons that you inserted a reference to various points of relevant locations, as well as any sort of routes of travel or roadways depicted in this particular.
So each icon is a house-shaped icon that I placed at different locations. The first one is red in color. It denotes where 34 Fairview Road is.
Yeah.
Starting at the bottom, there is a pinkish color one
Yeah.
that is the location of the Waterfall Bar and Grill.
Yeah.
Just north of that, you'll see a
This is
brown one, which denotes the
Massachusetts
Canton
State
Public
Police
Library.
too.
Following up this street here, which is Washington Street,
Wow,
you'll
fun.
come to Temple Beth Abraham, which is denoted by the blue
Wow.
icon there. And then off to the right is One Meadows Lane with
That's
the green
good
icon.
work.
Now, as far
Great
as,
job,
and if
Tully.
you could just use that laser pointer again to know where the temple is.
It is
It's
the
there,
blue
where
icon
it
in the
says
center
temple
of the
with a
map.
little blue
Now,
icon.
as far as
Mr.
where the
Lally.
temple is located in reference to specific roadways, it's, you mentioned, located on Washington Street, correct?
Yes.
Washington
And so
Street
what
is
if any
here.
roads
He's the
intersect
temple. He's
with Washington
Fairview.
Street around the location of the
He's
temple?
John's house.
Chapman Street is the street that runs in this direction towards Washington Street. So again, the Washington Street is a street here. It continues and stays Washington Street as it turns slightly east in that direction.
And as far as available points of directionality or ways to travel roadways from the area of the temple, it intersects in the area of Dedham, is that correct?
Yes.
And so as far as available routes of travel from Temple to 34 Fairview, if you could note those on the map.
If one was at the temple and were to travel to 34 Fairview, you could continue up Washington Street, take the left onto Dedham Street,
Yep.
which is that street you just mentioned, a left onto Cedar Crest, and to enter that
We'll
neighborhood
go down
down
Chapman,
here.
up Fairview, down
One could take a
Washington,
left
down to the high school.
and come down
This is
Chapman Street
ridiculous.
and take the right to enter the neighborhood in that direction,
What do they
straight
want to
onto
try and
Fairview
say
Road.
she did?
And if you're approaching sort of from the
Left Meadows.
from the Chapman Street side of Fairview
This
Road,
side,
as you come down
Fairview
Fairview Road,
first,
which
before she
side
went
of the road
from
is
the cave,
34
so-
Fairview?
Left.
And similarly, if you're approaching from the Cedar Crest side of Fairview Road and turn on Fairview Road, which side of the street would 34 Fairview Road be on?
Right.
Thanks. Now, with respect to each of these videos, as far as the Canton Public Library video and the Temple
Lilly, what
video,
about in CPR?
these are exterior cameras, is that correct?
Yes.
And sort of orientation-wise, where do they focus on or where are they pointed at?
The ones that we focused on were the ones that captured Washington Street.
Now, are you aware of
Okay, the
another
most central I've
location
been is Middle Mount.
right around the area of the Temple Beth Abraham called Cassie's?
Yes.
And that's essentially like a convenience store, is that right?
Yes.
And were you able to, you or other troopers able to retrieve video from that location as well?
I don't believe so.
Now, Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could publish a portion of the video from the Canton Public Library, which is marked as Exhibit 110.
Yes.
He didn't publish the video. That was a map.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could, from the first video.
But will it be? What time is this? 12
Time
a.m.
on the video, I'd ask you to
But
go
this
to
is
about
after
12.
they've left the waterfall. Who cares?
I'm sorry, 15 or 50?
50,
Let's see. Up on her way home, Lally. Let's see if you can give us when she dropped John off. After she dropped John off
Now,
at Fairview.
again, for orientation purposes, Lieutenant, if you could, using the laser pointer, just describe to the jury sort of what we're looking at here directionality-wise and what you observe in this video.
The main street in the video is Washington Street. The Waterfall Bar and Grill would be off to the right-hand side, and Temple Beth Abraham would be off to the left. The intersecting road we're looking at here is Sherman Ave, I believe.
And if one were to take
Sorry, I don't know if you guys are still there. I don't know. I accidentally,
Now,
I don't know what I did.
looking up at the screen now where it's paused at 12:15:58, Lieutenant, what if anything do you observe there?
I observe a large black SUV here on Washington Street.
And the large black SUV that you observed, is that consistent with what you've observed of the defendant's vehicle?
Yes.
And if you could describe to the jury as far as when I asked Ms. Gilman to press play, what is that vehicle going?
It's going to continue north on Washington Street through the intersection on Sherman and continue north on Washington Street.
And what, if anything, is sort of in that directionality as it continues off of the screen to the left?
Be heading towards Temple Beth Abraham.
Ms. Gilman, if you could. Ms. Gilman, you can pause it there. Now, with respect, Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could publish portions of the Temple video,
Yes.
and just as a continuing, my intention would be to sort of go back and forth if that's all right with the court.
Okay, yes.
I have one moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I should say this out a little bit better. 12, 17. That would be the second to last one there. And if you could pause there, thank you. Again, for orientation purposes, Lieutenant, if you could describe using the laser pointer there as far as what we're looking at in this particular camera angle and shot, and as far as the roadways that you use.
This is an exterior camera from Temple Beth Abraham at 1301 Washington Street. Where it's paused now at 1201, I believe is the timestamp, you see a vehicle. Here, that vehicle is traveling on Washington Street. We are now on the other side of Washington Street looking at it than we were from the library. So the south and towards the waterfall and the library would be off to the left, north would be off to the right.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could fast forward to 12:17. If you could pause it. Now, as far as the time concerns, the video from the prior video from the library was about 12:15 a.m. when you saw the vehicle consistent with the defendants pass by that location.
Yes.
And so as far as this time that's up here now, approximately 12:17 or so, or somewhere within that minute between 12:17 and 12:18, is that consistent with the time it would take to travel from where the library is on Washington Street to where the temple is on Washington Street?
Yes.
And from this particular time period around 12:17, between the minutes of 12:17 and 12:18, what, if anything, did you observe with reference to, of significance with reference to this investigation on this portion of this video?
At approximately 12:17 and 56 seconds, you'll see a large black SUV travel from left to right on the screen, which again would be northbound.
And again, left to right on the screen, just for orientation purposes, what is in the direction from left to right on the screen as far as of any significance to this?
As you continue north on Washington Street, you would, I believe the next intersection on the left is Dedham Street, which one could take to get to 34 Fairview Road.
Is Ms. Gilman, if you could, and I would ask you again to follow this 12:17.
Fairview Road.
Is Ms. Gilman, if you could, and I would ask you again to follow this 12:17.
Fairview Road.
Is Ms. Gilman?
stop.
And again, Lieutenant, directing your attention to the screen, and if you could, using the laser pointer, direct
Yep.
your attention to
We
what,
know
if
she
anything,
got to
significance
fair
you
view.
observe in this portion of the video at 12:17:56 from the temple.
A large black SUV traveling northbound on Washington Street.
And the large black SUV, is that consistent with the large black SUV that you observed in the prior video, Exhibit 110 from the Camden Public Library?
Yes.
Is that also consistent with what you observed as far as your personal observations of the defendant's vehicle?
Yes.
Gentlemen, if you could please press play. Gentlemen, you can pause that. Take that down, please. Ms. Gilman, if I could ask you for the Canton Public Library video again. And from this, I'm going to ask for from the second video. Now, Lieutenant, direct your attention to up on the screen. This is the Canton Public Library video again, Exhibit 110.
Yes.
And as far as this is the time frame that you were talking about before, between 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. that Troopers Dunn and Moore retrieved from Mr. Jutras, correct?
Yes.
And with reference to as far as the conditions outside at this particular time between 5 and 6 a.m., what, if anything, do you observe in this video?
The ground is now covered in snow.
The ground is now covered in
And
snow. Well
Ms.
done,
Gilman, if I
lady.
could ask you to fast forward to about 5:11 a.m. and pause it there.
There's still no tail
Now,
light.
Lieutenant, from this portion of this video from the Canton Public Library, what, if anything, of significance did you observe in this portion of the video relevant to this investigation?
You observe a large black SUV take a left from Sherman Street onto Washington Street, heading south.
But we know that she went looking for
And
him.
as far
Where
as the
they were.
directionality from where that vehicle came from and the directionality where that vehicle is headed toward, what, if any, of the locations of significance are located in those areas?
So again, Sherman Street or Ave goes straight to One Meadows. So if one were to travel from Meadows Ave, the residence of John O'Keefe, to this location here, you would come down Sherman and you could take a left onto Washington Street to head south.
And as far as south on Washington Street, again, off to the right of the screen, what, if any, locations of significance in this case are located in that direction?
The Waterfall Bar and Grill.
Now, as far as the black SUV that you observe in this video, is that consistent with the
Yeah,
black
current.
SUV you observed in the temple
Right.
video from 12:17 a.m.? Is
Yes.
it also
This is-
consistent with the black SUV that you observed in the library video from 12:15 a.m.?
Yes.
And is it also
A ball.
consistent with the defendant's black SUV?
Like he is
Yes.
such a ball.
Now, with reference to, are you familiar with Mr. O'Keefe's home having ring cameras affixed to it?
Yes.
Checking this
And are you
out.
familiar with a video from those ring cameras depicting the defendant backing the black SUV out of Mr. O'Keefe's garage at approximately 5:07 a.m.?
Yes.
And from that, as far as distance or time it would take to travel from Mr. O'Keefe's residence to this intersection covered by the Canton Public Library, from 5:07 to 5:11, now depicted on the screen, is that consistent with the time it would take to drive that, particularly given the conditions?
Yes.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could, please press play. Ms. Gilman, if you could pause that. Now, Ms. Gilman, if you could fast forward to about 5 minutes, I'm sorry, 15 and 30 seconds. Pause there, please. Now, Lieutenant, between these timeframes of 5:11 a.m. and 5:15 a.m., at any point in time, do you observe the black SUV traveling back in the other direction?
Yes.
And specifically around 5:15 and 51 seconds, what, if anything, did you observe on this video of significance or relevance to this investigation?
A large black SUV.
So their point is that they have said over and over, but specifically Jan McCabe, she and Kerry Roberts, she knew exactly where John's body was, which is why she saw it out the front of 34 Fairview before we did. Then why is she driving out past all of these places, past the waterfall, past looking where they were last night, looking for John. Like they have no idea.
Camp Public Library video earlier on 12:15.
Yes.
Nor does Lilly.
And
No.
again, as far as the black SUV that you observe in this, it's consistent with all the other black SUVs you observed in the video and the defendant's vehicle, correct?
Yes.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could press play.
It's so funny. I was watching Mark Bredero last night on The Young Jerks. He's so funny. He's like, this is like a cartoon. And even Lucky coming into it. The fact that he's
And Lieutenant, if you could, using the laser pointer you have before you, direct the jury's attention to where you observe the black SUV.
there it is.
Here on Washington Street near the intersection.
Again, using that laser pointer, if you could just indicate to the jury as far as directionality where this vehicle is going to head on.
North would be to the left-hand side of the screen
She's looking for her boyfriend
towards
that she
Temple Beth
loves.
Abraham.
She's panicking.
So if you could press play again.
And still we don't see any smash tail light because it doesn't exist. So,
If you could
and
pause
Lucky,
there, Ms. Gilman, you can take this.
and his truck's name is Frankenstein.
Now, Ms. Gilman, if I could
It's a
ask
cartoon.
for the Temple Beth Abraham video again.
It's
Your Honor, may
TV.
I have just one moment?
It's real life TV. Unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it. Ever. And how the detectives and the law enforcement officers sit
Pause there,
in
Ms.
their
Gilman. For the
box
record, this is from
and have this kind of
Temple Beth
reaction.
Abraham video. This is from the period of 5:10 a.m. to 5:20 a.m., which is the second video listed down within those. Now, Trooper, with regards to this video, at some
Blows my
point
mind.
around 5:18 a.m., what, if anything, did you observe of significance or relevance to this investigation from that period of video?
A large black SUV travel left to right on the screen.
Oh,
And
wow.
again, as far as directionality,
So- Forensic.
where would that vehicle be coming from and where would that
Look at all
vehicle
that.
be heading?
No.
The left side of the screen would be in the direction of the Canton Public Library and the Waterfall Bar and Grill. Off to the right, again, would be the intersection with Dedham Street, which one could take to 34th Fairview.
And as far as directionality, with reference to the earlier video from 12:17 a.m. from the Temple Beth Abraham, is directionality consistent in this video with what you observed at 12:17 a.m.?
Yes.
Now, Ms. Gilman, if you could play from 5:18. And Lieutenant, what, if anything, do you observe in this portion of the video relevant to this investigation?
A large black SUV traveling north on Washington Street.
Yeah.
And again, is that large black SUV that you observe here consistent with the large black SUV you observed in the prior videos and also consistent with the defendant's vehicle?
Yes.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could please press play again. Thank you, Ms. Gilman. You can take that.
You can take that completely
Mr.
insignificant
Officer, we can
garbage
turn the
down.
lights back on.
Look at Jim. He's like, oh, wow, I'm bored.
Now, Your Honor, if I could just
Oh,
have a
please
moment.
end. Please be finished with your direct, Lally. Please.
Now, Lieutenant, through the course of your investigation, are you familiar with what time it was that the defendant, approximately what time it was that the defendant arrived at Ms. McCabe's home?
535 approximately.
And Ms. McCabe's home is located on Country Lane, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, from the directionality of that vehicle in the 5:18 a.m. Video, as far as timing is concerned, 5:18 to about 5:35 or so, is that consistent with the time it would take to drive from that area of the Temple Beth Abraham to Ms. McCabe's residence on Country Lane?
No, not if you were to drive directly there.
And so to that point, as far as what about that time doesn't match up? Is it too short, too long, or something else?
It would take you much quicker to get there. It's about 1.5 miles from Temple Beth Abraham to Country Lane. You would continue north on Washington Street and just take a left into the Country Lane neighborhood. So the time to travel 1.5 miles.
And from sort of the distance between either that Temple video and either 34 Fairview Road or Country Lane, were you able to find, locate, or retrieve any surveillance video in those areas that would capture the vehicle?
No.
No, they didn't
Now-
have any around there.
As far as
What a load of garbage.
you had mentioned earlier in your testimony, when we were talking about the earlier 12:17 a.m. Portion from the Temple Beth Abraham video, the directionality of that black SUV, both in the 12:17 and the 5:18, where is Fairview Road in relation to the directionality of the SUV that you observed?
That SUV could take a left onto Dedham Street and then a left on Cedar Crest to enter down to Fairview Road.
And from your knowledge of the area as far as travel is concerned, would from 5:18 to about 5:35 or so, would that allow for sufficient time to go from where it's viewable on the Temple Beth Abraham video for the vehicle to then travel to 34 Fairview Road and then travel to 12 Country Lane?
Yes.
Now, I believe you had mentioned earlier in your testimony that at some point there were call detail records that were obtained in reference to the defendant's phone.
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury as far as, let me ask you this first, with regard to call detail records and with regard to phones in general, what if any specialized training have you received or have you given in reference to those areas of focus?
I've received over 200 hours of training relative to obtaining and using call detail records and cell phone data in furtherance of criminal investigations. Most recently, I've given talks and seminars about the topic, and I've testified in numerous courts around the Commonwealth about the topic.
Now, can you explain to the jury sort of call detail records, what they are and how you would use them as far as utility in generally speaking in reference to investigation?
Call detail records are business records held by cell phone companies, specifically to this matter, that are created in the normal course of business. Typically, you think about in a billing context. So if you think of your own cell phone bill, it would contain information like the date and time a communication occurred, the other phone number in which you communicated with, the duration of the call, that sort of bits of information. Obviously, as we're doing a criminal investigation, it's helpful to know with whom someone was communicating. Additionally, the cell phone companies memorialize other bits of information specific to what we refer to as CSLI, cell site listing information. They tell us the antennas that were used during the communication, usually just in the form of the first antenna and the last antenna. There are other engineering records that we can obtain that can be helpful when trying to determine where the handset, the cell phone was at any given time.
But that surely would not be
handset that you refer to
reliable.
is essentially the phone itself, correct?
Yes.
all this stuff
And
is
with
just behind
relation
the
to
stuff shit,
the
Tully.
handset and its
It's like
connection to
Celebrate.
antennas or towers, can you speak a little bit about that based on your training and experience with reference to how those,
It gets me so
how the
angry.
handset sort of communicates with an antenna and how it gets to a
Like they're
specific-
talking about antennas.
Cell phone companies place antennas
Stop it.
all around to help facilitate communication. You can think of a cell phone as really a two-way radio. It's sending and receiving radio waves. So in order
Now
to
we're talking
facilitate
about
that,
radios.
cell phone companies place these antennas all around. Traditionally, you can think of them on a tower, but they can also be placed on the side of buildings or disguised as trees or just on top of light poles. So they're all around, but you don't quite know it. As far as how the handset communicates with the antenna, there are different variables that go into that. Now, the cell phone wants to connect to the antenna with the strongest signal. The best predictor of a strong signal is distance. So the further a radio wave travels, the more it's going to degrade and not be as strong. But there are other factors that can degrade or reduce the strength of a radio wave. You're in a basement of a building or standing behind a large brick wall, the radio waves aren't going to penetrate that as well. But even things like precipitation or foliage on a tree can also hinder it. And you think about rolling hills here in Massachusetts in tall buildings, they can also disrupt radio waves.
As far as that sort of disruption of radio waves, are you familiar with certain areas that get sort of termed as a dead zone?
Yes.
And can you explain what your understanding of that term is as it relates to what you've been talking about as far as the handset communicating with the antenna?
I would define a dead zone as an area where there's not good cell phone coverage. So the antennas are not covering that area for whatever reason, obstruction, the density of the tower. Oftentimes, well, an antenna can only handle so many cell phones at a time. That's an idea that we coin or refer to as load. So there's only a certain number of devices that can handle an antenna. My best analogy of that is Gillette Stadium. I've worked at Gillette Stadium detail many times. We have roll call for Patriots game early in the morning. I take my post. I have strong functionality on my cell phone. As hundreds of thousands of devices are now entering the area around Gillette Stadium, the functionality of my cell phone reduces as more devices are using the antennas in that area.
Now, with respect to the cell phone companies themselves, they create or utilize this data for their own business purposes, correct?
Yes.
And can you just briefly explain a little bit about sort of what the cell phone companies would be using this kind of data for as far as what you're talking about, connections to antennas and towers?
It's a company who wants to make money, so it's going to memorialize things to bill their customers appropriately. They're also required by the FCC to keep for a certain period of time certain records because they are a communications provider. So there are some requirements regulatory that they need to fulfill.
Now, as far as the information that you're able to glean from these call detail records, I believe you've spoken a little bit about, but as far as what, if any, limitations are there with reference to the information you're able to glean from the records?
Well, the overarching one is I can only get what I get. So whatever the company sends me, that's what I can use in my determinations. Kind of the next step is when we're talking about antennas, I will never, I'll have difficulty saying exactly where a cell phone was when using an antenna. I can make generalizations that the phone is going to be in the area of the antenna, but I would never, with just that specific information, be able to tell you exactly where it is. I can look at other records, like the engineering records, where, especially now with 4G and 5G technology, the cell phone providers need to know how far away a handset is from the antenna in order to facilitate that communication. And they keep those ranging records for me. So if I can obtain those records, I can then place a much narrower area where a cell phone would have been during a time period.
Now, in reference to this investigation, you search warrants that Trooper Proctor did with regard to call detail records for Ms. Reed's phone, correct?
Yes.
And were you able to, or did you have occasions to look at those call detail records?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Your Honor, may we approach just sidebar briefly?
Okay.
Okay. I think I'm going to get off shortly because, well, I don't want to push my luck with law and crime and streaming them. I'm just kind of not really sure how far I can go. Can you hear me? And I am going to be live, so I'm going to do a bit of a I'm going to be live at lunchtime with Dylan at the over on the alternate corner at lunchtime. So court's lunchtime. So in a couple of hours. And hopefully by then, Lally is finished.
Yes.
And we've actually got
So I'm showing you a 4-page document, just has to look at a couple of minutes.
some decent something to talk about. This is just so boring. It's boring. It's scripted.
Do you recognize that document, sir?
Yes.
What do you recognize?
Corrupt.
It is the subscriber information for the phone number ending in 9554.
And through the course of your investigation, as far as that phone number ending in 9554, who, if anyone, did you find that number to be associated with?
The defendant, Karen Reed.
Now, with respect to the
Tully, you're gonna
documents
get
before you that
smashed
has
across
some
your
listing of
collar.
account information, is that correct?
Yes.
And who is listed as the subscriber for that account with phone number ending in 9554?
Karen Reed of 481 Gilbert Street in Mansfield, Massachusetts.
And are you, through the course of your investigation, familiar with that address, 481 Gilbert Street?
Yes.
Is that the residence of the defendant?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'll continue to introduce in a minute.
It's funny, isn't it, how
Okay.
Lally's so confident when he's on direct? It's such an ongoing cycle. He's really confident and he's
I'm
like,
actually going to see counsel outside back in just a minute.
okay, side back. He's so confident and I feel like he is like this schoolboy where he's like, yes, I'm doing so good. I'm doing so well, doing all the things that I'm supposed to be doing. And then the witnesses just get absolutely annihilated on cross. And he spends the entire cross objection objecting and huffing and puffing and like shuffling his papers and then he always redirects. Even if, every single witness, this must be number, I don't know now, I've lost count, but 57 or 58, I think Tully is. And it's like every single one, when you just think, you know what, I reckon you should just leave it, Lally. Don't worry about redirect. Just let the witness go. I'm not going to comment here because I can't, because I've had enough. Yeah, I'm just not going to comment. I'm going to keep talking about Lally. And so I just wish there are so many redirects, and I wish with redirect he would just give it up. Just stop. Let it go. Let the witness go. Stop. All right, I'm going to jump off for a bit because it'll be an hour or two until I jump on with Dylan. I'm going to do a post to let you know where I am. Unless Lally's going to stop, and then I'll stay with you for cross.
Now, Lieutenant Tully,
We marked that, Madam Court Reporter. Thank you. So that's 574.
4.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Lally.
thank you, Your Honor.
You'll make yourself
Now, as
sorry
far
for
as the
that, though.
information that you receive with reference to call detail
Like he
records,
doesn't
is
know.
there a section called the records key?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury what a records key is and how you use that in order to facilitate or read the records?
The records key
All right.
give us the
Thank you, everybody.
definitions
Thank
of
you, guys.
terms that are used in the record.
I will be at
So the
the
record
Ultimate
comes usually in
Villain
the form of a
over at the
spreadsheet or a
Ultimate Corner
PDF. You'll get columns and rows. The
in a couple
columns
of
will be
hours. I will
named
see
certain.
you then. Thank you so much for your support. I will see you then.